Ah, well, I got a good scald on it this morning. Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday morning to you. Whoop, let me get that out of the way. And welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardenville, Oklahoma. We are doing a summary of what we have taken a good long while to study in depth on the Olivet Discourse. For the last two videos, I've been focused on Matthew chapter 24 and verse 35. That text gives commentators a certain degree of chagrin, and here's why: because they look at verse 36, pardon me, as I pointed out, as the quote continental divide of the Olivet Discourse. They claim that Matthew 24 verse 36, when Jesus said, "But of that day and hour knows no man," that now he's completely shifting gears from the discussion of the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70 to the end of the Christian age. Now, look, let me make this observation one more time. All right. This is so simple, yet it's so profound. The Christian age has no end. God said he was going to give Jesus, the offspring of David, the throne of David, and of his throne, and of his rule, of his kingdom, there shall be no end. What does no end mean, ladies and gentlemen? And yet people say, oh, well, at his coming, Jesus surrenders the throne. No, he doesn't. That's not in the biblical text. It's a misunderstanding of deliver, the word deliver. So anyway, that simple but profound point should help guide us in our understanding of the Olivet Discourse. That, in other words, Jesus is not shifting gears in verse 36 from the end of the Old Covenant age to the end of the New Covenant age. It's just not right. We'll cover more as we get to verse 36 tomorrow. Okay, so for the last two videos, we have talked about the term, or Jesus' statement, heaven and earth shall pass, but my word shall never pass away. Okay, I'm not going to go over all that territory again, but I want to remind you of this really simple, really profound point. In Matthew 24, 29 to 31, Jesus had predicted the destruction of heaven and earth. And you may pick up your Bible. Wait a minute here, Preston. Matthew 24, 29 to 31 doesn't mention, quote, heaven and earth. I understand that. But as I pointed out in the earlier videos, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? If the sun is destroyed, if the moon is destroyed, if the stars are falling from the sky, earth is destroyed. So you got heaven destroyed, you got earth destroyed. It would be a physical impossibility, right? In any concept, any proper concept of cosmology, it would be impossible for the sun to go out, be darkened, the moon not give its light, the stars fall from the heavens without destroying the earth. You do understand that if the sun was darkened and went out, earth would be an iceberg in about 2 minutes or maybe 10 seconds. So it's amazing to me that commentators overlook the connection between Matthew 24, 29 to 31, when they admit, yeah, this is apocalyptic language. This is metaphoric language taken directly out of the Old Covenant to speak of the destruction of a city or a nation or a kingdom. Okay, thank you. So this is typical Hebraic, prophetic, apocalyptic language to speak of the downfall of a nation, never intended to be taken literally. Okay, so in Matthew 24, 29 to 31, you have the destruction of heaven and earth, metaphorically, figuratively described. Where does Jesus change hermeneutic from metaphoric, apocalyptic to prosaic and literal? Where does he shift gears? Okay, I need to shift gears now to the reality that here's something you need to understand. When preterists argue that Matthew 24, verse 35, Jesus was continuing his discussion of the passing of the Old Covenant temple. Oh, I'm telling you, futurists very, very commonly have a fit. You're just making stuff up. Whoever thought of such a thing? Well, I've already demonstrated that preterists did not make this up. But here's what you need to know. There is a growing body of scholarship. Crispin Fletcher Lewis, for instance, in a marvelous article on heaven and earth in the Gospel of Matthew, concludes that, for instance, and oh, by the way, Crispin Fletcher Lewis is absolutely not a preterist. Like so many scholars, he makes a ton of preterist sounding arguments, but nonetheless. But Crispin Fletcher Lewis, in this article on Matthew's use of heaven and earth, concludes that Jesus was referring to the passing of the temple. Why did he come to that conclusion? And by the way, if any of you want a reference so that you can look up Crispin Fletcher Lewis's article, just contact me and I'll be glad to give you the reference. So, why does Crispin Fletcher Lewis come to the conclusion that Jesus was referring to the temple when he said, heaven and earth shall pass away? Well, number one, the foregoing context. Okay? Remember, amillennialists and postmillennialists both agree that in the previous context of verse 35, Jesus is talking about the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. Okay? So the foregoing context of Matthew 24:35 is the destruction of the temple. Point number two, Crispin Fletcher Lewis takes note of the fact that in many Second Temple writings, the Jews referred to the temple as heaven and earth. Now remember, Fletcher Lewis is not a preterist. Crispin Fletcher Lewis would be referred to by most people today as a, quote, liberal. And yet he is astute enough to see how the Jews in the Second Temple period referred to the temple as heaven and earth. He cites numerous sources. Okay? Thirdly, in Matthew chapter 5, 17 and 18, Jesus said, do not think that I have come to destroy the law of the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. By the way, folks, you have to understand that Jesus is speaking elliptically here. What do I mean by that? Do not think that I am come to destroy the law of the prophets. I am not come to destroy. Destroy what? The law and the prophets. But to fulfill. To fulfill what? The law and the prophets. Ellipsis. Okay. For verily I say unto you, watch, until heaven and earth passes away, not one jot, not one tittle shall pass from the law. And here's an amazing thing. I've been in correspondence on YouTube for a good long while with a number of individuals who say, well, the law didn't pass away. And you say, well, okay, do you practice circumcision? Well, no. Do you observe the feast days? Well, no. Do you travel to Jerusalem 3 times a year to observe the feast? No. Do you refuse to eat certain kinds of meats? And you refuse to drink certain things because of what the law said? Well, no. Well, then you believe that the law is passed. And then, of course, the argument is made, well, wait a minute, Preston, you're failing to delineate between the moral law and the ceremonial law. So just recently on YouTube, I've asked this one individual, Do you observe the seventh day Sabbath? Well, first of all, he obfuscated and evaded and avoided and threw up a cloud of smoke. Well, there's no need to go into that very long and involved subject, but let's just say that God elevated the Sabbath to a spiritual level, to a matter of the heart. Oh, oh, I see. So we're not commanded to actually observe Saturday as a day of worship in which we do not work. We do no work of any kind. So you see what this individual has done ever so subtly is obliterated the entirety of the law. Jesus said, not one jot, not one tittle could pass until it was all passed. So here's an individual saying, well, the physical observance of Sabbath passed. Physical observance of circumcision passed. Physical observance of the feast days passed. Physical observance of meats, drinks, etc., passed away. So this individual admits and acknowledges and agrees that a massive, massive portion of the jots and the tittles have passed away. But he says, well, yeah, but heaven and earth hasn't passed away. Well, yeah, it has. Jesus said, until heaven and earth passes, not one jot shall pass. Many jots and tittles have passed, therefore heaven and earth has passed. That led Crispin Lewis to conclude heaven and earth in the text is the temple. Furthermore, here's something you need to know. And once again, I would urge you to look this up on your own. I was going to read the entire quote, but it's 2 pages long. I don't want to take that much time. Josephus, now remember this. Josephus was a 1st century Jew. He was not just a Jew, he was of the priestly family. Josephus, therefore, was intimately familiar with the lingua franca, the common language, the vernacular of the time. He knew the terminology. He knew the symbology. So what did Josephus? Well, in Wars of the Jews, Book 3, Antiquities, Josephus says, in speaking of the temple, by the way, he does the same thing in Book 7. Okay? So in Book 3 and in Book 7, Josephus twice describes the temple in the following way. Well, you have the court of Israel, and you have the court of the Gentiles. Then you have the holy place, which is a type of earth where all men dwell. Holy place, holy place. Holy place, temple. Holy place, earth. The holy place represented earth. And then within the veil, and on the veil, by the way, were engravings of not engravings, but embroideries of the 4 elements of the world: earth, wind, fire, and water. And within the veil, which is the dwelling place of God himself, it was called heaven. So here's Josephus, 1st century Jew, 1st century Jewish priest, informing us that the temple did indeed represent and was called heaven and earth. Now look, folks, in the book of Isaiah, book of Ezekiel, God spoke to the leaders of Israel as heaven and earth. In other words, he's including the entire polity, from the temple to the priesthood, from the temple to the law, as heaven and earth. And it was going to pass away. The point of all this is that in the cultural And we got to remember, folks, Jesus did not speak the Olivet Discourse in a vacuum. He was speaking to and for Jews, thoroughly conversant with the temple and its significance, its symbolism, and its language, its description. And Jesus said, and listen, keep this in mind, all of the previous discussion of Matthew chapter 24, 4 to 34, is widely admitted to be discussing the fall of the temple, the impending fall of the temple that occurred in AD 70. Okay, so if all of the previous discussion of the passing of heaven and earth is about the coming destruction of the temple, which was called heaven and earth, then why is it considered a break in the subject for Jesus to say, heaven and earth shall pass away? No, he's continuing the discussion. And that means that verse 35 was a reference to the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. Well, okay. Some people I've encountered say, well, okay, yeah, I'm with you on that. But verse 36, but of that day and hour knows no man. Here, Jesus changes the subject. Did he? Not really. Okay, I'm out of time for today. Do not forget, folks, this is directly related, all right? My brand new book, introduced November the 1st, Resurrection Feast Days, or Resurrection Feast Fulfilled, a study of the relationship between Israel's last feast day, Sukkot, and the resurrection. This book will normally sell for $25.95 plus $7.95 shipping. For the month, pay attention to the announcement here. For the rest of this month, I'm filming this on November the 26th. It's Monday's video for, obviously, November the 27th, okay? Just a few days left in November. But due to the great reception of this book, my wife and I are going to extend the special offer of Resurrection Feast Fulfilled all the way through to December. That way you can get a copy for Christmas, all right? So go to my website, donkpreston.com, BibleProphecy.com. Go to the banner at the very top, click on the banner, save yourself $12, okay? Thank you for joining me. I will see you on the flip side.